Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Outside Insider here. Apologies for the lack of streams over the last few days. It's just been a bit manic on this end. We were meant to do one last week, and we had a Sixers draft party. There was meant to be a stream on the channel. That one didn't quite come to fruition. And then I ended up being away for Charlton, for the teams that, or the guys in here that do know about the soccer team I support. They're in a big match at the minute. They've just had a semi-final, which they won. They'll be at Wembley this weekend. So I've been a little bit away. But during that time, of course, the Eagles have released their 2025 schedule. They've just announced Nick Sirianni has signed a new multi-year contract extension. So we can get into all of that today. But what I did want to do is just spend like 20, 30 minutes going over the schedule here for 2025, what it entails for the Eagles. I know it's already been vastly covered in other areas, but I feel like it's nothing quite like just sitting down together, going through the games one by one, and examining, what you've got on the line. So what I'm going to do, technology permitting, if this goes well, let's find out. If I go to here, we should be able to do that. And you should see this. Cool. Right. So now I can draw on it, which makes my life... Oh, it's locked. That's gone well. I don't know how to unlock it. Can I copy it or something? I wish I wasn't such a boomer at this stuff. It really would make my life so much easier. Oh, what do you mean I don't understand why it's locked. Well, that's gone well. Okay, so we can't copy it. That's gone very well. Never mind. Well, we'll do it on screen maybe if we can annotate it that way. So the Eagles schedule's out, as we know. Absolutely loaded here with top-tier opponents. I think that was the biggest takeaway. We knew that when the opponent reveal was announced. The schedule itself is always a bit weird, I think, from a spectator standpoint. Like, I never really liked the fact that it's ruined about an hour before the show even starts. Like, it's meant to be some big grand reveal on ESPN, and what happens is you end up just sat there not knowing what's going on. And the show is the schedule's already been leaked by like 16 people on Twitter. So we got that information a little bit early, but now we've had some time to process it. Now we've had some time to digest what we're going to see. I think it's time to make some predictions, and that's what we're going to try and do today. So week one, they obviously open up against the Dallas Cowboys. It's a huge home opener for the Birds, and a fixture really that carries a lot of importance. Like, is there many things on this planet more satisfying for an Eagles fan than raising the banner against your most bitter rival at home on the back of a Super Bowl? I just don't think you could draw it up any better than that. So to go into week one against the Cowboys, I think there will be a real sense of energy there. And again, I wish I could put a W here, but we can't. So I'm not really sure how to go about that. But maybe I can open it in I don't even know what I've done. Can I annotate it on here? I'm not actually sure. But we'll go, that's a win. That's an easy win against the Cowboys. I think the energy is going to be high there. I can't see them losing that game. So I'm going to make a note on my phone of just 1-0 because it'll be easier, won't it? So a win against the Cowboys in week one. Huge matchup. The Cowboys, I just don't think have any progress really this offseason. I feel like every year they appear to try and make a billion steps and never really actually take any of them. The Eagles have got considerably better this offseason. They were already stacked. They've shored up every big positional group. They've gone out and had a stunning draft class once again. I feel like based off the games last season where the Eagles just absolutely ripped them to shreds, that trend isn't going to stop anytime soon. So Eagles win week number 1-0. And then immediately, just a matter of days later here, 10 days in fact, the Eagles then back in action, this time against the Kansas City Chiefs. So on the road at Arrowhead, the defending champs go from their most bitter rival to the team they dethroned a little over, it'll be 7 months ago at that point. That's going to be a tough game. That is not going to be a walk in the park. I think that one's hard to predict. Like, I would like to say, in theory, the Eagles are the better team. I said this when the Eagles and Chiefs played, not in the Super Bowl, but the time before. Like, it must have been 2023, that nobody on the Chiefs scared me. Like, outside of Patrick Mahomes, I felt like the defense was good, but Mahomes has no receiving weapons. Travis Kelce's getting older. The running game is incredibly inconsistent. I feel like all of that was very, very true in the Super Bowl. Like, it was just a real effort of Mahomes versus everyone else at that point. Like, the defense couldn't get it done. They couldn't stop Saquon. The only outlier there is going to be the fact that it is in Arrowhead. That's a tough place to go and play. it's a coin flip for me. Like, I'd like to think the Eagles will win. I don't want to be negative and say it's 1-1 off the jump, but I don't know. I'm really not sure. And if you guys have any thoughts on this game, let me know. I think the Eagles will just go and make a real statement and make it 2-0. Like, I would love nothing more than the fact that they started the season by battering the Cowboys. They then faced a team who were, Super Bowl, Super Bowl finalists 1 year ago, and they beat them once again, leaving no shadow of a doubt that they do deserve to be in the NFL's elite conversation. And when you go back to 2024, which is what I'm referencing, the opening 5-6 weeks of that campaign, the Eagles weren't in the money shots. They weren't in the power rankings in the top 3 or 4 teams. It took a little while for the grease to get things going. And I think that, to me, is a real sentiment change. So I feel like the Eagles will win that game. They'll use it as motivation and a chip on their shoulder to really go out and prove a point against the Kansas City Chiefs. So 2-0 to start the year for me. Week 3 against the Los Angeles Rams. I don't rate the Rams. I mean, they've just had a monumental loss in the way of Cooper Kupp. I like what Nakua does. I don't think the defense has taken the necessary steps to compete necessarily. The thing is with the Rams, it's always going to just be the whole Sean McVay argument. And there's only so far that can take you. I think we've seen that in the last couple of years, that it doesn't matter how good Sean McVay is as a play caller, how creative he is, that without that once elite defense, without the guys like Aaron Donald, like Jalen Ramsey around after they mortgaged first-round pick after first-round pick to get these big names, that era is now gone. And the Rams are a very different team. And I think that back home after that, the Eagles could very easily advance to 3-0. So that's where I'll be going with that game. So it'll be 3-0 for the Eagles as we go into week number 4, which is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tricky game. The Buccaneers, to me, I think are always one of the more overlooked teams in the NFC, despite the fact they usually end up around the edge of the playoffs. Like, the past few years has been a real positive trajectory for them. Of course, a couple of years ago, they bounced the Eagles out in the divisional round with a deafening loss. The Eagles did well to respond to that. I think they're just a well-built team more than anything else. I think that they've got a solid run game. They've got some great receivers. Like, Baker Mayfield is solid enough as a quarterback. And the defense seems to be getting a bit better. I could see that very easily being a game that people do not take lightly. I think that'll be a game where Eagles fans might go into it like a bit of a breeze, expecting to win, and it be the Bucs that cause a bit of an upset. So of all the games on this schedule, I feel like that's going to be one of the only trap games. And that's kind of saying something, because the Bucs are still a good team and they should be regarded as such. But I think coming off of emotional wins over Dallas and Kansas City, keeping momentum up on the road back home against the Los Angeles Rams, there might just be a little settlement there of, yeah, we're 3-0. Maybe the rest of the division's struggling. The Cowboys are struggling. The Giants are struggling. Chill out, essentially, like subconsciously. And I think the Bucs will be the hungrier team in a much more competitive division, and at this very early stage might sneak out a very, very narrow win. So I would say 3-1, which I don't like saying. That's not a game I'd like to see them losing, but for some reason it's the Bucs. I don't know what it is about them, but they just seem to always find a way. Denver Broncos in week number 5 should be a win. I mean, especially based off last year, I can't really envision the Denver Broncos doing much of anything. So we don't need to discuss that one. I think that's just a straight 4-1, to be honest with you, as I'll just make a note of that. Yeah, there's nothing about the Broncos that intimidates me. There's nothing that makes me feel nervous. The Eagles just are the better team in every possible area, as they are in week number 6 against the Giants. Now, the Giants have had a bit of a more transformative offseason in comparison to years past. I don't think that necessarily means they'll be any more competitive. It's nice that they finally put the Daniel Jones era to bed. I don't think the one after it has started particularly well. And I don't think their offseason has been too much to write home about. So 5-1 through the opening 6 weeks. And obviously around this point last year, we were already having conversations about the bye week, which this year for the Eagles falls much later in week 9, which I think we can all agree is a breath of fresh air and something that the Eagles will be appreciative of. Like, you don't want an early bye and then have to go steaming into the playoffs on the back of 9 games, which is basically what they had last year. So I'm all about that, the late bye. But before we get there, Week 7, home, Vikings. I feel like, and I've said this multiple times now, I feel like the Vikings is becoming a bit of a rivalry at this stage. I think ever since 2017, ever since the NFC Championship game, Minnesota has had a very bitter taste in its mouth. You've then had the Sam Bradford trade, of course, a little bit before that. There's been little intertwining things shortly after, and the games that have been played just never really sit well with the Vikings. So I think the Vikings defense will be up for that game. If I'm a betting man and I'm looking at lines right away, I would probably go with the total at an under. However, we're not doing that. So the Eagles win. Like that, I don't see them losing that game. That is going to be a clean 6-1 there through the opening 7 weeks. But yeah, it might be a bit of a more intense affair than some people expect, but I can't imagine the Vikings doing much of anything, even though they are at home. You know, that's the difference. No, dude, my apologies. No need to apologize at all. It's my bad for being a little bit MIA. As I said, so last week we were meant to have a draft party, a lottery party for the Sixers, and the stream, there were some technical issues. So I didn't do mine because it would have overlapped. And then throughout the rest of the week, I ended up being away to watch my soccer team, Charleston Athletic, and sort all that. So I ended up being a little bit more MIA from streams than usual. So I've just dropped back in to kind of pick up where we left off, and we'll get into some rookie tape on Wednesday as well. But I wanted to at least go through the schedule, go through the opponents, and give some record predictions for, you know, the coming seasons. I kind of missed that boat, unfortunately. I think it dropped on the Friday night or the Thursday night when I was traveling away. So I missed all that fun stuff, but not this time. So after the Giants, I've got them going into the bye at 7-1, which I think is respectable. I think Eagles fans will take that. I say respectable. It's a very, very good record. And as much as we can appreciate the Commanders being a good team, I can't really see them doing much of anything. So yeah, like it's going to be a 2-horse race in the NFC East. But if you can go 7-1 into a bye week, the main bulk of this schedule takes place in those final few weeks, right? You've got Washington not once, but twice in 3 weeks with the Bills in between. That is a very, very rough end to the season. And it could be one that decides the division. So as long as the Eagles can take care of business going into the bye, the only game I can see them realistically dropping from a logical perspective is Kansas City. The only one I can see them dropping from me being emotional and looking into games and seeing I don't really like the Bucks. I think they bring a little bit more to the table than people realize. I think that will be the one. I think they'll handle Kansas City and the Bucks will cause the issue. But the rest of that opening slate should be pretty easy going. And that, of course, includes 3 divisional games where you would be undefeated in the division through the opening half of the season. So I'd say that is, you know, if you end up 7-1 through 8 weeks, they're doing something right. And that's a very good spot to be. Coming out of the bye, you're going to have a Green Bay team that gets very hungry for revenge. And this is where the schedule really picks up. Obviously, Green Bay and Philadelphia last played in the playoffs. Before that, they had a clash in week 1. They almost snatched week 1. And if I'm honest, they should have won in week 1. However, it was just one of those days where I think luck had it on the Eagles' side and the Packers just weren't quite mature enough to capitalize on the numerous first quarter errors that the Eagles just presented. And I think since then, the Packers have gotten better. I think their offseason's been pretty impressive. They've kind of ticked a lot of the key boxes. And Jordan Love's only getting better. I think the rushing situation is a bit more stabilized. They've got some solid receivers. They're going to be out for blood, just purely based off of that playoff game, purely based off of week 1. They're going to be out for blood. Eagles off a bye is going to go one of 2 ways, but Sirianni, I believe, unless I'm mistaken, is still undefeated off a bye. So that is going to be something worth keeping a note of. I don't know. I really don't know about that. That's another coin flip one, and I'd like to think the Eagles win. There is something in me that just can't bring myself to say that outright, and I think the Packers might steal one, but that's going to be rough. That's going to be a really tight game, I think. Like that's going to. It depends how Green Bay season goes, but I'm going to put them as a loss. I'm going to put them as a loss because I want to try and be logical here. His only loss off a bye, says Bear Brain, is Super Bowl 57, which is There you go. So not technically a regular season bye either. So in the regular season bye, he is undefeated, which makes you feel a little bit more confident about that Packers game. But yeah, very, very good to know. Greg, nice to see you, my friend. 12-5, he says. I've got them at 7-2 so far. So he might be on the right kind of track here. But after that Green Bay game, they go to Detroit. Oh, sorry, back home to Detroit. That's another one. That's a game where realistically the Eagles, I think, got away from playing Detroit in the playoffs. Like that could have obviously been a very important game. I don't know. I think the Lions are getting better and better. They're getting closer and closer. They're a team that I believe have really mirrored the Eagles here. And if they do lose to Green Bay and then they come home and they face the Lions, like, could they sniff blood in the water? Could we see Dan Campbell rally his men, really push that offense that one step further? If I'm honest, you're looking at the Eagles secondary at the minute. As much as I love Quinyon Mitchell, as much as I love Cooper DeJean, that other outside corner spot is going to be one of the only games where that might be attacked. So if it is Adoree Jackson starting outside, that's going to be attacked as well. Birdbrain says the Lions did lose both of their coordinators, so that is certainly something worth noting. I think it comes down to the Green Bay game. I think this is a conditional one for now. Because obviously this is way too early to make any reasonable picks anyway. But for me, if they win in Green Bay, they win against Detroit. If they lose to Green Bay, I think they'll lose to Detroit. I think that'll be a bit of a knock, coming out of the bye week. The Lions will be probably feisty at that point again in a much tougher division. I'm going to go 7-3. I think the Lions, in this scenario, will win that game. Now, the second game against Dallas comes up next. That's obviously on the road. The Eagles have conquered the Jerry World curse last season. I think they'll do that again. The Cowboys aren't very good. We don't need to go over that matchup twice. That's 8-3. So we're back. It's fine. We're back. 8-3. We're fine. Greg says 4-2 in the division. Ooh. Are those 2 losses against Washington? 2-2 in the AFC West, 3-1 in the NFC North. The NFC North I can get behind. So I've got them at 8-3 at the minute. After the win in week 12 against Dallas. They then go to week 13 against the Bears. We can chalk that up as a win. We don't need any further analysis on that because that's about as easy as it gets in theory. And after 2 losses against Green Bay and Detroit, they bounce back against Dallas. They take that momentum into a worn down, depleted, depressed, unwilling Chicago team at home, and they wipe the floor with them. And then they go into the Chargers. Now, week 14, that's a very, very intriguing matchup. Now, given the recent coaching changes, we don't know what we're going to see out of Justin Herbert in 2025. Is he still going to be this quarterback that is for some reason held on a pedestal despite never really doing much of anything outside of winning that Rookie of the Year award? Or are we going to see a renewed Chargers team with a bit more, I'd say, oomph on defense and a bit more sustainability on offense? That's a really hard matchup. I think based off of right now, I think the Eagles win and they go 10-3. I think that's a very winnable game. Although it is on the road, it's a West Coast game. That might play a role. It is at 8:15 p.m., so it's a primetime matchup on a Monday night. That's a wild card. That's one of the few games, again, I would put them in the same category as the Bucs, who Greg just mentioned there. And for those that missed that bit earlier, I had the exact same dilemma with the Bucs. I think that they consistently get overlooked despite making progress most years. I think they've also got a bit of a knack against the Eagles recently, like ever since that playoff blowout that they had. It's become a bit more intense between the two teams, but they've had another good offseason. I think they've looked really, really good in terms of just getting closer. They're not quite Detroit level in terms of being exponential growth, but they're certainly taking steps. I love the receiving core they've got. I love the rushing game and the way they've stabilized that. I like Baker Mayfield. The defense plays very aggressively. And they're sort of like a team where Minnesota wants to be, and they're just not quite, is the way I describe the Bucs. Like, I think Minnesota want all the pieces and they want to have the star receiver, and they've got that, and they just can't find the quarterback. They can't get the defense going. So, yeah, I'm going to say they go 10-3 here, though, against the Chargers. Spidey Mods, nice to see you in the chat, my friend. Eagles might go 7-10. Oh, well, that would be underwhelming. But then again, at that point with the NFL, that's playoffs, right? Like, all you have to do really is get into the dance. And look, I say this as an English fan wearing a Charlton shirt because my team just got to the playoff final, okay? You don't care where you finish in England as long as you get to the dance. If you get into the playoffs, it's all that matters. I think the difference with the NFL is with divisions only having 4 teams and there being a bit more pressure around it, that you want to win the division, that the seeding is much more, I think, important in the NFL compared to, soccer, for instance. Like, again, we finished 4th in our league. We played the team that were 6th and we barely beat them. So in the NFL, if you're like, the top seed in your division and you end up playing like the number 8 seed, who could be a team like Chicago, for instance, I know they won't be, but you get what I'm saying, that it's a much easier path in. But I do think there is a lot of pressure just based off the fact that they're defending champions. I would say as long as they get to the playoffs, which they will, like realistically they will, the rest doesn't matter. Like, would you care if they went 7-10 and reached an NFC championship at minimum, or if they won the division and crashed out in the playoffs? Because I know which I would rather, It is a tough schedule, Spidey. I completely get the concern. You're not the only one, I can assure you. He said we lost a lot of pieces. I don't know. We'll get to the roster in a bit. I think we can reassure you. I think we can calm you down. We'll have some Eagles therapy. I think we can get you going. TJ Mack, nice to see you, my friend. 13-4 for the Birds. I think we're on the right track here. Greg said 12-5. TJ said 13-4. I've got them at 10-3. I think you'll make. What were the playoff? Hang on. Right, if we're not making the playoffs, right. NFL standings 2024. What was the lowest seeded team that got into the playoffs? Can we tell? The Broncos got 10-7. NFC 14-12, 10-10, 11. Okay, all right, yeah, fair enough. Maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe it is 10. 10 wins might have to be the target then, in fairness. I'm probably thinking like a few years ago, but now they've added the extra stuff. 7-1 at home. All right, let's get to the next one. So we've done the Chargers. We're now on to the Raiders. I also want to get back. I didn't mean to overlook Bird Brain's comment. I think that's a very good point. I think the Chargers have one of the most transient fan bases in like the entire NFL. Up there with a place like Vegas, up there with a place like Miami, where the fans just do not make any impact whatsoever. And every time the Eagles play the Chargers, it ends up feeling like a home game, which is a real testament to the traveling Philadelphia faithful. And it just makes a dramatic difference. So, yeah, I think that will absolutely be a factor. But I think what we have to bear in mind, Bird Brain, as a caveat, is that this might be the year for LA where they actually get good, or they actually they look like they're going to make a run. They look like they're going to go deep into the playoffs. And Justin Herbert does take that next step under a very, very accomplished head coach. And we do see progress. And with a transient market, I think you're going to sell more tickets if the team starts doing well and there's a reason to believe. That's the thing you have to believe in those markets. It's why the Raiders never sell out stadiums anywhere. The Chargers, to be fair, as soon as they get near the playoffs, typically fill up and those home crowds get a little bit more vocal. So I still think the Eagles fans will be very prominent. I still think they'll make a lot of noise. But if you're talking about a Chargers team that at that point is 8, 9, 10 wins deep into the season, that you might end up with a slightly different atmosphere at SoFi than what we've been used to in recent years. The Raiders, I can't see them losing that. I think they're an absolute mess. I think they have been for a while. I don't think that's going to change. So 11-3. This is where it gets fun, though, isn't it? This is the really, really tough end to the year, and one that could mean absolutely huge amounts when it comes to the postseason. Because you've got a real sentiment now that Washington pushed the Eagles to their absolute limit in that playoff game. You've got the sentiment that the Eagles and the Commanders are now having a renewed rivalry. It hasn't been a rivalry for a very long time. Yes, they play each other twice a year. Doesn't mean those games have been anywhere near competitive. That changed really properly for the first time. It wasn't competitive because the Eagles were sloppy. It wasn't competitive because the Washington Commanders suddenly worked out a little weakness in the defense. These were just two brilliant teams going at it. twice a year. And it was a joy to watch. 3 times, in fact, including that postseason game. So for me, I think they split them. I really think they split them. And if I'm honest, I think it goes the other way around. I think the Eagles win on the road, and then in week 18 they lose at home, and there's a reason for that. So let's say they're 12-3, and they go into Buffalo, right? This will be the game that matters. Let's say they win on the road in Washington somehow. Now hypothetically they'll be near the top of the division, if not maybe 1-2 wins in front. They can go into Buffalo on the road and it not be the end of the world if they lose. Buffalo, given that division, they might have to, I'd say, go a little bit harder potentially than last year. I mean, like, it wasn't that competitive. Like, it's only the Dolphins and the Jets. But in terms of the seeding for the AFC, like the Chargers, even last year before everything else, were an 11-win team. The Broncos did make progress. The Steelers and the Ravens are good. You're going to end up with the Bills likely needing to win that game. The Eagles, I think, will have a much easier time in the NFC. The NFC compared to the AFC is like a different level. The AFC is so hyper-competitive. We haven't even spoken about Houston, right? Who's good in the NFC outside of the Eagles, outside of Washington, outside of Detroit? Like, even if we just go off the standings, the Rams topped their division last year, not scared of them. The Vikings were second in theirs, not scared of them. The Packers had 11 wins, not scared of them. The Bucks had 10, scared of them. The rest of the NFC South is a mess. I do not fear anyone in the NFC outside of Washington, I think, at this stage. The Bucks in a one-game sample size, maybe. I think the Eagles would lose on the road in Buffalo. And then when they come home in week 18, they'll be sat at 12-4. And depending on the need to play opponents, depending on the need to rest players up for the week ahead, I think they'll just lose it. I think I'll just go, yeah, it doesn't matter. Like, if you're 12-4 and Washington are like 10-11, you can be like, well, we've split the games. Maybe we've got the better divisional record. I don't know. I could see that being a thing where, like, it gets to week 18, you've had your bye 9 weeks earlier. You've played well. You've struck out against a very good Buffalo team. And that's that, to be honest with you. I think 12-5 is respect. They're not going to sweep Washington. You can flip the games if you want, if it makes you feel better. If you'd rather they lose on the road, then they lose to Buffalo, but they bounce back with a win in week 18, which you have a version of that 3 games helps you sleep at night. But I think they drop 2 of the 3. And they end with a 12-5 season, or a 13-5, whatever one it is. And they end up in a scenario where they end up top of the division, if not second, going into the playoffs a little bit more rested. They don't have to overly compete. And also, what a hell of a sign would it send to the Commanders if the Eagles go into week 18 and they go, this is a big game, we need to win. Let's just rest the starters. Let's just rest Saquon. Let's put Will Shipley out there. Let's rest Quinion. Let's put Keely Ringo out there. Let's take out Jalen Carter. Let's take out, I would say Bryce Huff, but at that point, that's a no-go. It'll be Nolan Smith or whoever. And we'll put, ADR out there or APR. Why not? And just get in their heads. Just go into week 18 and let Washington run up a 34-0 score. Let them run up a 50-burger in week 18 against backups. And just let them have the mind games of why would they throw the game. And then when the Eagles and Commanders could inevitably reface in the NFC Championship game, you've kept all the tricks in the bag. You've not overcomplicated it. You now have a fresher Saquon. You've got fresher play. I could absolutely see that being a thing. Billy Covington, hello there to you too. If they win 14 games, would they be the first team to win 14 games in 3 years in a row? Very good question. I don't actually know, unfortunately. I can try and find out for you, but it will be me sat here typing and scrolling Google. So I'll try not to bore you. But that is a hell of a feat. And I'm really glad you pulled it up because that does sound like one hell of a stat. And probably part of the reason why Mr. Nick Sirianni was given his multi-year contract extension today. I don't see the Cowboys trying to get that week 1 win. I see the Cowboys might try a lot harder. I mean, they will. Like, obviously, they will. But have they taken enough steps forward to combat Saquon Barkley? Are the receivers good enough? Is the quarterback good enough? Is the defensive line good enough? I think the big difference for Dallas last year was they lost a lot of pieces on that offensive line, and it absolutely killed them. I think just like they tried to keep the old guard there for as long as they could and keep them coming and keep them coming. Then you had injuries, you had a couple of other people leave. And what was left, you had like 2 or 3 starters left, and the rest were just rotational or like emergency, picks in. Micah Parsons is Micah Parsons. He's always going to be an issue. Was a non-factor against the Eagles. CeeDee Lamb got locked up in Guantanamo Bay last year. I don't think the running game is anything to worry about, especially with Zach Bourne and the season he had and the amount of defensive prowess you've got up front with the likes of Carter, Davis, and the defensive end. So I just don't think the Cowboys match up well at the minute. Put it this way, if it was this Cowboys team versus the Eagles team of 2023, maybe then Dallas wins. But I think this Eagles team's too good. If we're talking about an Eagles team where it's Miles Sanders and it's Kenny Gainwell as your running backs, if we're talking about an Eagles team where it's Jason Kelce at the tail end of his career, there's no insurance policies, it's maybe Isaac Seumalo or whoever, and you've got these like older guys in that, whatever, fine, fair enough. It's an older team, it's a bit more mature. This is a very young, very different team. And I'm not in no way meaning that as a short any of those players, because I've probably named 3 of the best offensive linemen that the Eagles have produced in a long time. But when you're talking about the character of this team now, it is fueled by Georgia Bulldogs. It is fueled by young team captains, right? Like, again, Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, Nakobe Dean, Nolan Smith. You've got young upcoming corners like Quinyon Mitchell, like Cooper DeJean. You've got the safeties that have just been replenished. Reed Blankenship now has a new running mate. He too is a rookie as well. I think this is just going to be a washout. I just can't see Dallas doing anything. And like you say, if it's the Miles Sanders revenge game, it's going to end in 17 yards and a fumble. Like I'm just not seeing it at all. I'm describing the 2021. Yeah, to be fair, yeah, fair enough. It's late here. My body clock is all over the place. I apologize. But yeah, I can see this Eagles team going 12-5, maybe 13, between 10 and 12. I think I will be satisfied. I can't see this being a blowout season. I also can't see it being a massively underwhelming one. I think what I will say is remember how 2024 started. It was sloppy. It was murky. There were questions over Sirianni. How 2-3 weeks in, I know I wasn't the only one debating putting Sirianni on the hot seat, debating just what the upside of this team is. And we got proved wrong. And I think the Eagles did a very good job of just proving everyone wrong, getting back to basics, focusing on the run, and just building an offense that is sustainable. We saw a much more a much more controlled Jalen Hurts with his aggressiveness. Wasn't launching balls downfield anywhere near as much. But just because he doesn't, as we learn, doesn't mean he can't, because you get to the Super Bowl and he just pulls out some of the throws off his lifetime. So, yeah, I don't fear Dallas. I think the only teams that genuinely scare me on this schedule are Green Bay and Tampa Bay, which is bizarre because they're not the teams that most people will look to. They'll go to Washington, they'll go to Buffalo, they'll go to Detroit. You can even put Denver in there. Bear in mind that, the Broncos are coming off a much improved 2024 season. What I will say is I don't fear Denver because they're at home. There's none of this mile-high bollocks. There's none of this altitude conversation. It's Denver traveling to the East Coast. That's going to be the big factor there. And that means it will just be talent versus talent and what is essentially a neutral field in terms of there not being an elevation change. And the Eagles should have a much easier time. Although, in fairness, if they do go ever to mile high, you want Saquon Barkley to just run the rock. And I think that's a very good pivot to have. So there are my Eagles schedule predictions for 2025. Yeah, I'm optimistic. I think they can absolutely get back to the Super Bowl. The main thing for me is Washington. That it's more about Washington, I think, this year than anything else. Are the Commanders going to burst out the gates with a fire in their belly? Can Jaden Daniels do what Dak Prescott was never able to, which is capture that lightning in a bottle, store it, and repeat it the next season? Because Dak never could. And that's why then the Cowboys ended up stagnating amidst a myriad of other reasons. The Commanders might have finally found something. They've got their star receiver. They've got a good backfield. They've got a great young quarterback. They're building the offensive line. The defense is getting better. Is that enough to start winning 12, 13 games in a year? Is that enough to dethrone the current Super Bowl champs? Because if it is, the pressure is absolutely on Philadelphia, because walking into that number 1 seed is not going to be easy. And that's going to be it. It's going to be a dogfight between those two all year long. And I know I won't be the only one, especially drawn to Commanders games this year as a result. I think this is going to be a very, very exciting season. The NFC is finally receiving some signs of life. We've got teams making actual progress outside of the main 3 or 4, and that's good for everyone. But before we hang out the boots on this stream, I just want to answer Billy's question here. Do I think Buffalo can finally make it past Kansas City? I really hope so. I really, really hope so. But in fairness to last season in the championship game, I remember doing a stream like in the build up to it and saying my heart wants the Bills to win. I want the Bills to finally get past KC because I think they're the better team. I want Josh Allen to get his moment. I want that team to just finally get over the hump and dethrone Kansas City. In my head, I wanted the Chiefs to win because to me, I felt the Eagles matched up much, much better with the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. And luckily, that's, someone was listening in the footballing heavens and we got that matchup and the Eagles absolutely cleaned up house. As for 2025, I don't know. I wonder how much of it at this point is a mental thing for McDermott, for instance, with play calling. Like, how many times have the Chiefs and the Bills played and the Bills every single time should have won it? Like, how many times do you come away from a Chiefs-Bills game going, there was Buffalo's to lose if they didn't do this, if Josh Allen didn't do that? Like, even last year in that championship game where he forced that late interception, didn't really need to. Could have sustained it, could have pulled it back for another time. That's the difference. I think I compare the Bills and the Chiefs to Rory McIlroy and the Masters. Can win everything else, can beat every other course, can beat every other golfer on the planet. But when it came to Augusta for over 15 years, couldn't get it done. For some mystical reason about that course, he couldn't get it done. And that's where I feel like the Bills are at with the Chiefs. They're this close. They've got every bit of talent needed to get past the Chiefs. It's just going to take one game. And when they do, and they're over that hump, I don't think many teams can stop them. I think the Eagles probably have the best chance of anyone, especially in the NFC at least. But I want them to. I do want them to. But on that note, as we said, so just to go through our Eagles predictions one more time before we end the stream, it's a little bit of a lighter one. I'm bullying myself back into streaming just because my body clock is so scuffed at the minute. As you can see, probably I look like I've just been punched in the face twice. We'll go through this one more time. Eagles win in week 1. I can't remember week 2. I think week 2 is a toss-up, but I think they win. Then they win against the Rams. I've got them losing to the Bucks, beating the Broncos, the Giants, the Vikings, and the Giants to go into the bye 7-1. I think they lose to the Packers. I think they lose to the Lions. I think they then bounce back against the Cowboys. I think they win again against the Bears. I think they win against the Chargers. So that brings you to around 10-4. They win against the Raiders, 11-4. They'll win one of these games, or whichever record it is. They'll win one of these games anyway, and then they'll end up with a record of 12-5. So I think it goes one of two ways, those final 3. I think they'll either win on the road, lose to Buffalo, or to be fair, if you win on the road and win against Buffalo and you can just go with the bench anyway and the backups in that game, absolutely fair enough. But I think they'll split the series, the Eagles and Commanders, regardless of how that pans out. I just think those teams are too tightly contested at the minute. There's not much to separate them whatsoever. In fact, all that maybe can separate them is one man called Saquon Barkley. That could be the difference here. But yeah, I think it's going to be a very, very exciting season. I can't wait for it. And don't forget, again, on Wednesday, we'll be back to normal programming. We've got some more rookie Eagles to go through their tape and see what we've got. I believe we've got, it might be Kendall next. It might be the center we're looking at, if I'm right. We've just done Ty Robinson. Is it? No, it's no. We've done Ty Robinson and we've done Smail Mondon as well. So yeah, so we're now on to, I believe, Drew Kendall. So if you want to watch some tape on the Eagles' newest center, I'll see you Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern. We'll go the full hour. We'll break down some film and we'll make some evaluations on him. Thank you all for being patient with me. Again, yes, last week was just a little bit of a mismatch with a couple of streams we had planned not quite happening, and then me being away in the latter part of the week. But I will see you all again on Wednesday. I hope you've enjoyed this stream. On your way out, if you could just leave a like and hit that subscribe button if you would be so kind, if you haven't already. it's Mac McWilliams. Sorry, before we go, it's Mac McWilliams next time, which that I am enticed about. I'm very enticed to get into his tape. I think that could be a very trendy, very fun pick to get into. Anything secondary related, I'm all over. Like you guys know me. When it comes to me and like players in the back end, absolutely love breaking down their tape. So that Mac McWilliams it is then. We'll see what the Big Mac can handle. But until Wednesday, go Birds. We'll see you soon. And hopefully you can join us in a couple days' time to break over some Mac McWilliams tape. Go Birds again.